Makiya by Blentkills, Georgiev. In the wild deserts of water, it was often that the armies of Blentkills would fight the sandstorms. In this wasteland, you could rarely find any water and food, so if you haven't come prepared, you will probably be feeling and seeing the hot sand and the blue star for the last time in your life. The strong fiery winds which carried the sand were just a part of the challenges the desert would give you, and she challenged everyone who goes by. While the storms were raging, the survivors of the not long ago fighting army were crossing the fearsome desert, so they could return and report to the war chief. They were equipped with broken grey armors. It was obvious they used to be shiny and beautiful, but the hits which they took while fighting for their lives and honor had destroyed the idea of knights in shiny armors. Their ravaged red capes had the crest of the kingdom of Blentkills. Nyadzu, who was tall and very strong-looking, with just a small fraction of his face revealed by his helm, had a deep voice. He noticed there was an unusual figure laying on the sand and yelled at the others, "I found somebody or something." In a quick reply, a voice was heard from the army line. "It's probably the remains of some deserter." Then another voice tried to mock Nyadzu. "Or just the desert is toying with your senses." Nyadzu was sure there was something there. He had crossed not once this place and not once fought the illusions cast as dark spells upon the trespassers. Blentkills' army always traveled in a straight line through the desert. The strong warrior then broke the line and went towards what he saw. The closer he got, the more his vision was cleared as the little specks of sand were in the air, and the more this thing he saw revealed itself to him as what seemed to be a human body. He could see the clothes of the person, black, but never seen before anywhere in no matter what lands. There were no armors, swords, hammers, or whatever weapons seen around this black-dressed body. After leaning down to see if the person is alive, he could now see the person's face skin slightly damaged from the specks, which hit it empowered by the powerful winds, short black hair and a few locks of it falling in front of his face. The warrior estimated the young man to be around 20 years old. Chapter 1. The Beautiful Lady. Princepsius was a gigantic city, the capital of Blentkills. It had an enormous population, and even though not very often, there still were robberies. Sometimes food was stolen, sometimes clothes or weapons. But definitely, the most stolen thing was food. They caught very easily the wrongdoers and with incredible haste. When they were taken in, they would be led to a certain place, beneath the city. When the king had an opportunity, they faced him and he delivered his judgment. Even though rules were really strongly followed, and the law was always executed righteously at the first glance, there was one exception. Exactly, it was Andrei. He wasn't given the chance to stand around and wait to see what's going to happen. The moment he regained consciousness, he was sent straight to King Goodnovel, and the decision was to isolate him in a cell beneath the castle as his accusation was espionage. The cell was dark. There were 3 walls and their base grey color was hidden either by blood or some kind of filth. Instead of having a 4th wall, the cell had iron bars. They were certainly beautiful back when they were made. They had a spiraling form, and if you remove all the years, filth, spit, and whatever else you might think had gone through them, then they would definitely be a pretty sight when you roll your eyes from top to bottom. The distance between the bars was as much as 3 fingers. Beyond the bars, in this crazy silence, the rhythm of water drops was heard. From time to time, the steps and noise from the guard's armor were heard.
"Hey, you there, you alive?"
A rude voice echoed in the dungeon. Andrei quietly looked around, trying to find out where he is and who is looking for him. He could hear the yells and footsteps coming closer to him. A few seconds later, the guard was standing in front of the cell.
Hey, yeah, you're alive. What kind of human are you? You must be crazy to attack without armor and weapons. What were you even thinking?
In a little crazy madman voice, the god was spilling out words out of his mouth, along with a moderate amount of spit. Then the god, with his pride obviously hurt, he screamed,
Do you think we're so inferior to you?
A few minutes of silence continued to play as the background drops of water falling were the symphony of this one-sided conversation. The god was tall and frail. He had some badly crafted armor, which was obviously made for him, but it definitely didn't do anything to make him look stronger or more frightening. He had a big nose and dark eyes. In his gaze, you could see only cruelty, egoism, and fear. The first impressions Andrei had was that this is a very badly abused and fallen to his knees person. The god obviously wasn't in his right mind and often spoke nonsense and spilled words of how great he was. Andrei didn't reply to him. He wondered who he was being compared with and what armor was he talking about. Weapons? Andrei never even held an actual weapon in his life.
Why aren't you speaking?
The raging guard continued.
Maybe you think that I, Kawaii am inferior to you. I'm not worth your tongue moving.
Calm down. A deep manly voice was heard as the sound of heavy footsteps followed. I'm going to interrogate him. Get out of here. Following those words, the god just went somewhere without even saying anything. He just obeyed the order. The man now standing next to the cell had a very wise look. It was Nadzo. His age was about 40. He carried a cross-shaped scar on his left cheek. The long, curly brown hair and beard made him look even a bit older, but also very mature. He had black eyes and a piercing gaze, such as if his eyes spoke by themselves. These were the eyes that would always as if speak of Nadzo's intentions. In this case, those intentions definitely didn't look too good. I am Nadzo Alistair. Proudly he announced, identifying himself. As he went inside the cell, then he continued. I don't know how you reached those lands where I found you, but you deserve praise. It's really rare that somebody goes deep in these deserts, and when he does, he usually dies. You are lucky I found you, but this doesn't change the fact why I'm here. You're a spy. A few seconds of silence were introduced just to set the fearsome atmosphere, and then Nadzo continued. If you don't speak now, don't worry. You look young. There is still time for you to start speaking. He said in a slow, very deep voice. Finally, the words of the young one spilled out his mouth. What will you interrogate me for? I don't even know where I am or what I'm supposed to do here. What is this place and what deserts are you even speaking of? Andrei said all this with an obvious panic and complete insecurity. The boy had seemed calm, but actually he was as if in hell with questions till now. Calm down, yelled out Nadzo and pierced Andrei's eyes as he noticed his strange behavior. Tell me your name. Where do you come from? These were the questions Andrei confidently answered. Makiya. My name is Andrei Makiya, and I am from... He stopped talking and lowered his head towards the floor. From Ortir? Nadzo asked. What's an Ortir? Andrei quickly asked back with obvious confusion. A few moments of silence were introduced and the falling water filled the background stage again. I get it. I guess you don't mean to talk a lot now. No point wasting my time. There will be a moment when you want to speak, said Nadzo, locking up the cell. After the echo of the key holder, you could hear the many keys ringing along with the noise from the warrior's armor as he took each step. While the steps faded away, the lonely melody of water drops filled Andrei's mind. He fell into the darkness of the shadows and he tried to answer all the questions in his head. He didn't know what had happened and how he got here. He could only remember one thing: images of strong winds and the desert. That's just it. Not long afterward, steps were heard again. It was Cowardy. He sat down next to the cell bars and revealed his broken, ugly teeth with a cruel smile.
It looks like you'll be hanging around here for a while,
he said, narrowing his eyebrows. Andre looked at this annoying guard and he kept his silence. Then the annoying man continued.
In the beginning, we might be gentle with you, but if you don't start speaking soon, you'll start to feel hunger, thirst.
He started to speak in a darker and a bit lunatic voice.
I'll give you food and water just so you can survive because they say you might say something. I can't believe we're at war with crap like you. If I could, I would cut you down right now with this blade.
Proudly, Cowardly pulled out his sword from its sheath, and then his whole image faded into the darkness with only laughter, hardly withheld behind his ugly teeth, being heard. Andre didn't know if it was night or day. Every drop he could hear was just like a watch, as if time had stopped, but also hadn't. The cycle was the same with no difference, as if it was an endless whoop. He knew he could breathe, he knew he could think. He was certain of one thing: he existed, but who was he? Why does he know only his own name? He repeated these questions and never managed to satisfy his desire to know. It wasn't just once that Natsu had come to interrogate him, but Andre just couldn't tell him anything. If not answer Natsu, then at least answer these questions to himself. Another day, when Natsu was coming to fulfill his duty, had come. This time, not only the warriors, but also gentle light footsteps were noticed. Of someone who was as if wearing slippers. The so repetitive sound of footsteps had arrived, and the warrior once more opened the cell.
There he is. That's him,
Natsu said and pointed at Andre with his head. After the echo of the deep voice dispersed in this huge dungeon-like prison, out of the shadows came out the figure of a person whose face was hidden by the shadow of the dark blue cloak. After the mystery cloak got closer to Andre, he noticed it's a woman with curly brown hair, a bit beneath the shoulder's length, and white hair locks, giving off a beautiful sight for the eyes. Coming closer to him, her face revealed itself, young, soft, gentle, with dark tattoos starting a bit below her eyes and continued down towards her neck, where they hid behind her clothes. "Give me your hand," she requested with a melodic voice. Andre did so without uttering a word, slightly stunned by her beauty and unusual looks, but also curious what she would want with him. A handshake? No, it couldn't be that. She reached out her hand towards him, and the part of her sleeve rolled up, revealing even more beautiful black tattoos, which as if were coming from her face and reached out to her wrist. Andre figured out she is special. She is not just a woman or a warrior. After touching their hands, Andre felt a slight breeze, some kind of wind. Cold, yet warm. He felt refreshed. Her cloak pushed back from those elemental events and revealed her deep blue eyes, which constantly became brighter. She was piercing his eyes with hers, and as if she was watching a movie. She was gaining knowledge. She was seeing things. Her tattoos started extending as if they were alive. Tattoos around her eyes were wider, and the ones which reached her wrist now reached her fingertips. As if you were gazing at the beauty of nature spreading out. That's what her incredibly gentle and beautiful tattoos looked like now. Andre got struck by a strong headache from the visions he started receiving. He could see himself, walking with people dressed in the same way he was, like a school uniform. He was laughing with them. While the visions lasted, the woman squeezed his hand stronger. In those visions, he could hear screams which burned his brain. Niadzul didn't interfere, but he was curious and surprised. Andrei's eyes were closed and obviously he was in pain. In his vision, he saw himself opening a door, beneath which was only blue light. "Free him," said confidently the blue-eyed woman, and let go of the boy's hand as her tattoos were returning to their original positions and her eyes, which slightly emit blue light till now, were going dark blue again. "But why?" he asked, as he couldn't hide his curiosity by raising the tone of his voice and having a confused look on his face. "He's not a spy. He doesn't want to fight us," she answered quickly, saying the words she knew would be easily understood by a soldier. "I understand," said the warrior as he received a flashback from an hour earlier when the king told him that whatever she decides, that is what must happen. "Come," said Niadzul as he and the mysterious beauty started walking. Andrei followed them speechlessly. He looked like a ghost, as if not even a single thought was in his head. Outside his cell were big tunnels. There were many other cells, but there was no one in them. They were walking in this dark tunnel made of grey bricks, at the end of which a light could be seen. Hey guys, this is Daniel, aka Blentkills, and this was the first chapter of my book Makiya. I hope you enjoyed it. It's signed an exclusive contract on Goodnovel and soon to be Eon, so if you are curious to read the book, all of it, you can go there and check it out. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do more audio versions of my book, but if there's any interest, I'm going to do so. Write in the comments, like the video, so I can know. And also you can join the Makiya community on Facebook in the Facebook group, Makiya Group Official. And that's it, guys. See you around next time.